This is a new time for all of us, and no matter what the sheltering in place looks like for you, it's definitely different than what it was previous to the sheltering in place. So whether you're busier than ever, or if that your life has gotten incredibly quiet, if you're living by yourself, whether you're still working. I go out in the morning and construction workers are out there working. There's people at Starbucks. There's certain businesses that are having their employees continue to work, and so we bless everybody in whatever the situation is. And whatever your situation is, what we are all here to remember is that the divine presence, this infinite principle that is always already itself, it doesn't come and it doesn't go, it is always good. So we start opening our hearts to the realization that whatever our situation is right now, we open our heart. Last week I was asking about what do we trust, and for me, I trust absolutely that this good is working for my highest good right here and right now. So whatever my circumstances are, they're for my highest evolution as an individual soul, and I know that for everyone here. So any idea that we have in our mind that I can't wait till the sheltering in place is over because my good is going to happen then, we're sort of waiting, putting off our good for when this is, I just have to get through this, as opposed to really being fully present in what's happening right now in your life, in our life, knowing that this is for all of our highest good. It's for the collective highest good. I can't help but think of Genesis, in Joseph and his brothers sent him off to slavery, and all the different highs and lows that he has when he's working in Egypt and the Pharaoh. And the chapter ends in Genesis, what humans meant for evil or created out of separation, God always means for good, and it always ends up being for good, even if we can't see it. So our practice during this time is to see the good, to hold tight to it. As I was contemplating these new thought ideas, which have been universal, and as Claudia reminded me the other day, it's new thought, ancient wisdom, they've been around forever, is that we want to hold to the truth, but we've also grown in saying, but we also need to have a soft heart. So I think of it as a strong mind and a soft heart. Because in the old days, you would get so strong in your mind, but it almost was like, because we were holding to the truth so tightly, that our hearts were shutting down and we weren't allowing all the experiences to come through in ease and in grace. So we want to say and know that the power and the presence of pure spirit, that this is infinitely good, and it also can be difficult. It also can be challenging, and we want to be gentle with ourselves and saying, well, I should be experiencing only good now because God's all good. No, new things are challenging, and this is a new thing, a new adjustment, and so we need to be soft and gentle in the changes. Like for me, I know with Jack and Julian home, we are together far more than we've ever been. So our practice is learning how to be with each other on a daily basis, where for some people, when you're by yourself, I was imagining people who are, or not, I don't have to imagine people, I know who are more extroverted in their personality, who are suddenly at home by themselves a lot more. That could be a profound challenge. And if we so it's a challenge. It's not that it's easy, but at the same time, we continue to hold to that principle over and over. And this is for my highest good. The divine presence knows exactly who I am, and I stay connected to that divine presence. I stay sustained in that powerful presence, that good will eventually reveal itself in ways that we can't even imagine. So one of the first questions today as we go off into our breakout groups is, what is a practice that you do that is non-negotiable? What is a practice that you do to stay connected with and in the divine presence within you? For me, that's the most nurturing thing I can do, my spiritual practices. But I was even being with that, it's not even my spiritual practices. It's just this knowing that the divine is more important to me than anything else, and I talk to it and commune with it, that love is what sustains me. And does not matter what's happening in the external, in the conditions, I keep returning to that. And I know you do too. To practice and love that divine presence. And then if I'm not perfect in my practices, if things aren't always happening the way I want, I know that I have this one nurturing idea that I am so completely loved by God, and that I love this divine presence within me, not a God out, well, it can be a God out there too, but also within and without is the same. That I love this divine presence with my whole heart, body, mind, and soul. That one idea is something I nurture day in and day out. We all nurture day in and day out, and that can be the most sustaining practice. And then if you have spiritual practices that express that love, and that is your commitment, it's a non-negotiable commitment. So no matter what's happening in the external world, whether or internal world, we do our practices, we will discover that our spiritual practices are the most nurturing thing that we could possibly do. I've been reading this book. I want to show you this book. I've been reading this book, Living with the Seal. I don't know, is that backwards? Living with a Seal. It's hysterical. There's a guy named Jesse Itzler, and he is fully alive. He loves to try new things all of the time, and so he's a long-distance runner, and he was watching this guy run, just hurt his body was hurt, and he kept running, and he said, I want what that guy has. So he cold called him and found out he was a Navy SEAL, or had been a Navy SEAL, and called him up and said, I want to learn what you do. Can you move in with my family for 1 month? So he had this Navy SEAL move in with him, and he made him uncomfortable for that 1 month. He had to do, the agreement was that he had to do everything the Navy SEAL asked him to do. So there was a night, the guy said, you know what, you're too comfortable. Here's a wooden chair. You have to sleep in that tonight. He got him up. This is in the winter of New York City. He gets him up at 5 or 6 o'clock every morning to run miles. They do and he goes to all of Jesse's meetings, but then he'll make him do push-ups, just constant working him. And there are times in that month where Jesse's very uncomfortable, is tired, is exhausted. He's still trying to lead his normal life. It's in his family. His wife and son are in the home. And yet he continues because he made this commitment. There's a non-negotiability to it. And then, so he has a high energy, so he tries all these new things all of the time. So the Navy SEAL challenge was difficult, but then he thought, well, what's really hard for me is to be still. So then he went and lived in a monastery for a period of time to be totally quiet. And that was really hard for him to sit still and learn his lessons, and he wrote a book about that. That's a wonderful, creative way we can approach this time of sheltering in place. That yes, it's difficult. It can be difficult. Yes, it can be a challenge. Yes, it is definitely different. But when we have that sustained nurturing practice, so for instance, one of his practices, he's been running since he was in his early 20s. For 30 years, he's gotten up every morning, and he runs for about, he said, 2 hours. He doesn't listen to music. That's his time alone. And he's in his 50s now, so it's been 30 years. He's only missed like 4 days. He said, that's a non-negotiable. That's what sustains him. So when we have that sustaining practice in our life, it allows us and gives us freedom in these new conditions and new circumstances to start to discover new ways of being, things that we've never tried before. And yes, they might be difficult. So if you're really not, I have really resisted technology. I write in a journal, I read books, I do my calendar on paper, and suddenly everything is on computer. And I would say the first week in sheltering in place, I just shut down. I was just so tired of being on the computer. And that if I was going to connect with people, I had to be on computer. And I really was resistant. And yet there's a shift that started to happen this week where I started to get more curious and more, well, this is interesting. And let me explore it a little bit more. And there's a sense of curiosity and play that's come with this new virtual world, which I had completely resisted up until this moment. But necessity has asked me to open up my heart and my mind to explore something that is very uncomfortable, that is not natural. There's some people who just love the virtual world, love being on the internet, love technology. And I'm just now beginning to say, okay, I'm willing to, not even willing, curious, interested, engaged. So the invitation to you is and I've already known by reading social media that some of you have been trying new things, which is really fun. So as we go into our breakout groups, share some of the new things that you've been bringing into your life that are fun, that are creative, that are playful. I've been reading some people look at this not as a sheltering place, something like artist in residence, creating these artworks. You can be an athlete in residence. People who, there's so many gifts of being isolated because it takes away the stimulus. For those of you who are, I know many of you are still working, but if you have that sheltering in place and you're not leaving your home, it's an incredible opportunity to go within. And that's really the last point I want to make. Well, in all of these, there's a commitment that we can't, we grow only through commitment. And That doesn't mean that we're perfect in the commitment. That doesn't mean we don't have a soft heart towards those commitments. But there is something joyful in having a strong mind. Part of New Thought, we've done either or, and I want to do both, where I can have deep, abiding, soft compassion, but also that strong mind that I'm going to be relentless in trying something new. And to be relentless takes perseverance, takes commitment, to continue to show up, because the entire universe responds with that commitment. We are all on the spiritual path. You wouldn't be here this morning if you weren't on a spiritual path. And one of the hardest things on a spiritual path is being still, is being quiet. We have so many things going on. There's so many activities. Even in a spiritual community, within the spiritual community, there's so much happening that are sort of the business, is the stuff of the world. If we do have time, I know some people are busier than they've ever been. Hopefully you can start carving out some quieter time, because this is an opportunity to get more and more still within ourselves, which can be, I think, often the most uncomfortable aspect of the sheltering in place, of the spiritual journey, of letting go of stimuli. Every mystic that I've ever read has said, let go of this world. Every mystic I've ever read has said, let's let go of this world. Even if you're going to integrate this world, first you have to let go of it to then come back and bring your spiritual awareness into the integration. So letting go is essential in this spiritual journey. So the entire collective world, or at least, well, in California, every state, I guess, is different. So I'll just speak to California. The entire state of California and many other places all over the world are in this sheltering in place. What an incredible opportunity to have this collective energy of turning within, of getting quieter, and to, yes, be creative and allow these new things to come through and be expressed, but to remember the fullness and wholeness of pure spirit, all the joy that has ever been, all the intimacy, all the love that has ever been is right there within our very being. We don't actually have to connect with another person to feel such a profound state of intimacy, of love, of passion, of clarity, of joy, of harmony, of beauty, of peace, that everything that we experience externally is but a tiny portion of what the spiritual world offers us. So hopefully, as we're going, someone has their, isn't muted. As hopefully we'll have the opportunity as we go within to experience that spiritual world, the fullness of the spiritual world. It's not empty. There is an emptiness aspect to it, but there's so much happening in this spiritual world. I don't know about you. I've had so many deja vus in this past week. Sometimes they just continue on and on. So I'm thinking parallel universes, or not thinking, just sort of like, wow, what's happening? That as we get quieter, we start opening up to these other realities, and it's cool. It's fun. There's so much happening. There are divine beings. There's spiritual beings. You are not alone. That divine friend that we heard in the reading by Ernest Holmes today, it's right there with you. And it's exploring these inner states with you. And those inner states become more real than the chairs in which we are sitting. And we have been given this opportunity on a silver plate. Here, practice knowing everything that you long for. And in this conversation about extroverts and introverts, ultimately in the spiritual world, there are no extroverts and introverts. There's just spiritual beings. We are all spiritual beings. No matter what our human personality is, our spiritual essence is who we really are. And that contains everything. So to know that. We're teaching this, or not teaching, facilitating this Practicing the Presence class by Joel Goldsmith. So I've been reading about him. And he was so committed to the spiritual practices that it's inspiring to read how powerful they can be. And I know all of you already know that, just reminding all of us. That's what we're here to do, is to collectively remind us what we know. He became a Christian Science practitioner in the 1920s, and he was playing a lot with how his abundance, financial abundance was coming, because the Christian Science practitioners actually charged money for every prayer that they did for you. So if you did a prayer by phone or by letter, you charge a certain amount. If you did a prayer in person, you charged a certain amount. And finally, he just decided, I'm going to stop billing people, because God is my source. The I am of me is my good. The I am of me is the supply. It doesn't come to me, it comes from me. And I have the consciousness of supply. So he stepped into that reality, and at the same time, he didn't always have the money that he needed. So there were periods in his life where there was a night he went where he was homeless, and then another night he slept in a car, but he was struggling financially. Then he got that going. He's got his money, the money started flowing, and then he married a Christian Science practitioner who had a child from another marriage, and her child was going to Harvard, so they decided to move to Boston. Joel is talking to a Christian Science practitioner in Boston. He says, "You don't want to move here, Joel. They don't pay Christian Science practitioners the way they do there. You're not going to be able to afford a life, and you have a Jewish name and you have a Jewish look, and therefore you're not going to be accepted here in this very conservative New England town." And Joel said, "Oh, that's even more reason for me to go, because these principles work no matter where I am, and I have to prove that to myself." And he said, "In fact, I want to prove it to myself, so when I go to Boston for the first year that I'm there, I'm not even going to step foot into a Christian Science church. I'm not going to reach out and connect with people. I'm just going to keep practicing this principle inside of the one power and the one presence, and that I am a vehicle for it no matter what." So he moves to Boston, gets an office, and the financial is not working, but he stays. He goes to his office from 9 to 5 every day. He does not move. He holds to that presence of oneness. And he gets a few clients coming in from off the street. He's got his plaque, but not enough to pay bills. And so he said, so I had to pretend when I talked to the guys who are asking, "Can you pay your bills?" And he said, "Well, be patient. It's going to come. I'm not lying. It will be there." And he said, "I was just pretending, because then I would get off the phone and I'd say, I know the I am of me is the sufficiency, and that money's right here. It's not in the future. It's now. I'm already supplied." So he continued to hold to the truth of who he was, of what the divine truth, that he was always abundant, that the source was there. It wasn't showing up in his external life, so he had to talk to people recognizing that he didn't have the money in hand, but he always talked much deeper and longer to himself about what that truth was. And of course, clients started coming, and the year came, and he financially was fine in that year. And by the end of his 10 years there, he had so many clients that when he started, he was the only office in the building, a practitioner office. And ultimately, there were 23 full-time practitioners, because his business was so overflowing, he needed help from other practitioners. So now there's 23 practitioners, and he's leading a very full and abundant life as a healer, standing in those principles. People are having healings by working with him. And when they would go to him, they'd only spend 5 or 10 minutes with him. He would just sit in this presence. That's all that's needed, to sit in the presence, and it gives exactly what it needs to each and every person. He didn't have to figure out, what do they need, what's your problem. He just stood in the presence, knows everything. The presence is the source of all good. It's such a powerful place to stand in, and that's the place which he did. Now I want to talk about the soft heart, because he was so committed with that awareness of who he was, that no condition, no circumstance was going to ever move him, and it impacted the world around him over time, not always immediately, but over time. That powerful awareness of, my good is now, my good is now, my good is now. And then his wife, who was also a Christian Science practitioner, got sick, so they moved down to Florida for her health. And she died soon afterwards. And that was a very difficult time for Joel, because he said, how can I be such a healing presence for so many people, including he had been it for himself, but I cannot, no matter how much I prayed, and no matter how much she prayed, I couldn't save her. I couldn't heal her in the human realm. And soon she actually visited him from the other side, and he realized that she was in God's hand, that there was nothing bad that happened, that death is just a continual expansion of consciousness and a continued growth, and that he had gotten very attached to the idea that in holding that presence, it had to look a certain way. Now what we find is that things do get better in this world, but that doesn't mean they get perfect. That doesn't mean, as C.S. Lewis said, when people are saying, how do we live in the atomic age? He said, like you live any other time. There's always these threats of death, and the one thing we're guaranteed is that we're all going to die. The question is how we are going to live, and how we're going to live is to the fullest extent possible. We don't know the things that might, the challenges that may come to us. What we do know is that there is a possibility in every moment to live the fullest possible way that we can. It's a choice. It's a choice of how we want to live, whether the physical circumstances define who we are, or we allow our heart and our mind to love the Lord our God, or the divine presence within us, the I am of our being, and to know it is the source of everything, and it extends the possibility of goodness in every single moment. One of the things that SEAL said, the Navy SEAL says to Jesse, is that when we think we're at our limit, when we have pushed and we just think we can't go anymore, he said, you're really only about at 40%. We are as human beings and spiritual beings, we are capable, of experiencing so much more, that we actually are the ones who limit ourselves, that we can open up to so much good right now. And we have this collective group of people who are home praying and meditating and going deeper and deeper. And with that, we want to walk in what we know, walk our truth, walk our talk. That as we go out into these Zoom groups and talk, that we're speaking from a place of knowing who and what we really are. That yes, we want to have deep and abiding compassion for those parts of us that are struggling and are in pain, but we don't ever want to leave it there. We don't ever want to say, and that's just the way it is. That's how we're feeling temporarily. And we have compassion, and we envelop ourselves in that love. And at the same time, from that nurturing, we're willing to take more chances, and we're willing to get up and start again with a new idea, with a new way of being, because there's so much good available to us all right now, not when the sheltering in place is over, but right now. But we need to hold to that idea, practice it, live it, become it. And then we get to be that radiant light of infinite good for all people who come in our presence and come in our contact. And we become that healing presence for others, just as the divine has been a healing presence in our own life. So please join me now as we're going to go into prayer. And after the prayer, Jack will open our hearts with his music, with an original song. How grateful I am for the power and the presence of pure spirit that is right here and right now, the fullness and the wholeness of this presence. It is infinitely good, infinitely loving, all of the time. Its good can never be limited ever by any condition, by any circumstance. It does not come, it does not go. There's nothing we need to fix. There's nothing we need to make happen. It is fully alive right here, right now. We just breathe that in. There is no more good in the past, and there's no more good in the future than there is right now. For we are spiritual beings, and those spiritual beings transcend time and space. It transcends all conditions and circumstances. It transcends all past habit patterns, not just individual habit patterns, but global habit patterns, global ideas of what it is to have a pandemic in your community. The Spirit transcends all of that. It's never limited by any old ideas, any history, any past experiences. It is fully free, unlimited good right here and right now. And how grateful I am to be in a community that practices this awareness, that continually, over and over, returns to the awareness that this infinite love, this passionate love, this creative love, this beautiful love, this fully alive and joyous love is the center of our beingness. It is the power of our life. It is the power of everything that we experience, that we choose to abide in that presence and that power. We choose to continue to live from and as this one power and one presence, not just because it's the most fulfilling way to live, but we can't help it. For we are love itself, and we love this presence with our whole being and our whole presence, power and body and soul. So I give thanks here and now for every individual who is joining us here this day, knowing that we are all conscious in our conscious awareness of this presence. We are set free. We are set free into new ways of experience our good that we never before imagined. We are open. We are available. We are saying yes, and we are allowing the power of good to fulfill every area of our life as individuals, as the Lighthouse community, as the Bay Area, as this country, as this planet, as this cosmos. This good is all encompassing right here and right now. For all of this good, this compassion, this kindness, this tenderness, this beauty, all of it is available right here, right now. And we are it. We are all of it. In deep abiding gratitude, we let this word be now. And I invite you to say with me, and so it is. Amen and amen.